Just stop it! You can't marry her when I'm still here, Tony. There is something you haven't told her yet. There is something you have been hiding from her. Before you say I do, there is something you all should know. Tony stood at the altar, feeling the cool breeze from the ocean gently blowing against his face. He tugged at the sleeve of his grey tuxedo, trying to steady his nerves. The guests, all dressed in colorful ashake, smiled and whispered among themselves as they waited for the ceremony to begin. The beach was beautiful, with flowers lining sandy isle and the sound of waves gently crashing in the background. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of Tony's life. He was marrying Sandra, the woman he had fallen in love with just a few years ago. Everything had been planned down to the smallest detail. His mother, Mrs. Johnson, had been so excited about the wedding, and she had always approved of Sandra, seeing her as the perfect wife for Tony. But as Tony stood there, something felt off. There was a strange feeling in his stomach, and he couldn't quite shake it. Was this just nerves, or was something else going on? Just as the priest was about to start the vows, Tony heard a loud commotion from the back of the crowd. The guests started turning their heads, whispering and gasping. Tony's heart began to race as he looked back to see what was happening. A woman in a red dress stumbled into the aisle, looking frantic. Before anyone could react, she fell to the ground with a loud thud. She spread her leg wide apart just to grab full attention from the crowd. The crowd was stunned. It was Kemi. Kemi was crashing his wedding in the most dramatic way possible no one has ever seen. Kemi lay on the ground, her red dress standing out against the golden sand. The guests were stunned, their whispers filling the air as she slowly lifted herself up. All eyes were on her. She was out of breath, her face pale, but there was something else: determination. Tony's heart pounded as he stared at her. This couldn't be happening. Not today. Kemi, what are you doing? Tony whispered, his voice tight with panic. He glanced at Sandra, who stood frozen beside him, confusion and fear in her eyes. Kemi got to her feet, dusted the sand off her dress. Her voice trembled, but it was loud enough for everyone to hear. I'm sorry, Tony, she said, shaking her head, but I can't let you do this. The crowd fell silent. Even the ocean waves seemed to quiet down, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Sandra looked at Tony. Her voice was shaking. Who is she? What's going on here? Before Tony could answer, Kemi turned towards the guests, addressing them directly. I am Kemi. Tony and I were together for years. We were in love. We were supposed to get married once, but it didn't happen. Tony's heart sank. What was Kemi doing? He hadn't spoken to her in years, and now she was standing here, threatening to destroy everything. I was never supposed to come here today, Kemi continued. Her voice was steady. But you all need to know the truth. Tony, this man here, Tony was going to marry me. We were engaged, and he didn't just leave me for Sandra. There is something else he's been hiding from everyone. Something that even Sandra doesn't know. Sandra took a deep breath, her hands trembling. Tony, what is she talking about? Tony's mouth went dry. He tried to speak, but no words came out. Kemi turned back to Tony, her eyes full of... But now, everything was coming out undone. Kemi, don't do this, Tony pleaded. Kemi shook her head. You don't get to decide anymore, Tony. The truth has to come out, and it has to come out today. She took a deep breath, steadying herself before dropping the bombshell. Sandra, Tony and I, we had a child. The crowd gasped. Sandra's face went white as she stared at Tony, disbelief written all over her features. A child? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Tony felt like the ground had fallen from under him. He had hidden this from Sandra, from everyone. Years ago, when he and Kemi were together, they had a child, a son, but their relationship had been rocky, and after they broke up, Kemi had taken the child and disappeared. Tony had tried to find them, but Kemi had made it clear that she doesn't want him in their son's life. He had never told Sandra. He thought it was in the past, but now, with Kemi standing before him, he realized he had been wrong to think it would stay hidden forever. Sandra's eyes filled with tears as she looked at Tony. "You had a child, Tony, and you never told me." Tony felt his throat tighten. "Sandra, I wanted to tell you, but it was complicated. Kemi took him away. And I thought it was over." Kemi let out a bitter laugh. "Hey, over? So you think our son just disappeared because you wanted him to? He's still here. Tony, he is still alive and he deserves to know his father. You've spent all this time pretending like we didn't exist, but you can't run from this anymore." Sandra's tears fell freely now, her hands shaking as she backed away from Tony. "You lied to me," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I trusted you and you lied to me." Tony tried to reach for her, but she pulled away. "Sandra, please. I was going to tell you. I just didn't know how to say it. You've been hiding a whole human being, a whole child from me. What's more, a son, Tony. How could you keep something like that from me? How could you let me stand here today thinking I knew everything about you?" Kemi crossed her arms, glaring at Tony. "She deserved to know everything, Tony, not just about our son. Tell her." "Tony, I said tell her the real reason we broke up." Oh. Tony's heart raced. "Not this. Anything but this. Shut up, Kemi." Kemi took a step closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "It wasn't just because we were young and things didn't work out. Was it, Tony?" Sandra looked between them, her face full of confusion. What is she talking about? Please, what's going on here actually? Kemi's eyes filled with tears as she looked at Sandra. "Tony and I were together for years, but things fell apart when I found out he was seeing someone else. He was cheating on me, Sandra. He didn't leave me because he fell out of love with me. He left because he had someone else." Sandra's eyes widened in shock. "Is that true, Tony?" Tony's chest tightened. "Not with all these lies between us. I gave you everything. I trusted you, Tony." Tony's heart shattered as he realized what he had lost. He had hurt the two women he had loved the most, and now he was paying the price. Sandra turned and walked away, leaving Tony standing alone at the altar. The guests were silent, stunned by everything they had witnessed. Kemi stood there, victorious, but there was no happiness in her eyes. She had won the battle, but the war had left everyone broken. As Tony watched Sandra walk away, he knew he had lost more than just a bride. He had lost the trust, love, and future he had been working towards. Everything he had hidden, everything he had tried to leave behind, had come crashing down in a single day, and worst, on his wedding day. As Sandra disappeared from the view, the wedding guests began to whisper and murmur. The tension in the air was palpable, and many were unsure what to do next. The once joyous occasion had turned into a nightmare that no one could have predicted. Tony stood motionless at the altar, his mind a whirlwind of emotions, anger, regret, guilt, and pain. He couldn't believe that Kemi had done this, but deep down, he knew it wasn't just Kemi's fault. He was the one who had lied. He was the one who had hidden the truth from Sandra. Kemi turned to face him, her face a mix of triumph and bitterness. "You thought you could just forget about us, about your son." Her voice was sharp, cutting through the silence. Tony looked at her, his heart heavy. "Kemi, I know I made a mistake, I know that, but this wasn't the way to fix things." Kemi crossed her arms, her expression hardened. I didn't come here to fix anything, Tony. I came here to show you that you can't just erase the past. You owe me, and you owe our son big time. The guests began to disperse, uncomfortable with the unfolding drama. Tony's mother, Mrs. Johnson, who had been seated in the front row, slowly approached the altar. She looked at her son with a mix of pity and disappointment. Tony, how could you keep this from me? Mrs. Johnson's voice was soft, but filled with hurt. I thought I knew everything about you. Tony didn't have an answer. He couldn't explain why he had kept the truth hidden for so long. All he knew was that now everything had fallen apart. Days passed, and the dust from the disastrous wedding began to settle. But Tony's life was far from calm. Kemi had filed a legal case for full custody of their son, and Tony was forced to confront a part of his life that he had tried to forget. Tony sat in his lawyer's office, going over the details of the custody case. His lawyer, a stern-looking man, Mr. Ade, glanced over the paperwork. You will need to be prepared for a fight, he said. Kemi has a strong case for full custody since you haven't been involved in your son's life. Tony sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know, I have made mistake, but I want to be part of his life now. I just don't know if Kemi will let me. Mr. Ade adjusted his glasses. It's going to be difficult. She will argue that you abandoned them, and the fact that you didn't tell anyone about your son doesn't help. But if you are serious about being involved, we'll fight for joint custody. Tony nodded, determination filling him. He had lost Sandra, but he wasn't going to lose his son. He couldn't erase the past, but he could try to make up for it. Meanwhile, Sandra had distanced herself from Tony. She had moved in with a friend, trying to process everything that had happened. The love she had for Tony hadn't disappeared, but the trust was shattered. One evening,